Late in 1940, a Chinese delegation interested in purchasing airplanes through America's Lend-Lease program met with American advisor Claire Chennault, who had arranged for a demonstration of the brand new P-40 Warhawk. Well, Chennault wasn't necessarily a big fan of the P-40, but America had plenty to spare and chose John Allison to showcase the airplane's capabilities. Well, after the brief exhibition, the delegation proclaimed, "We need 100 of those." Chennault replied, "No, you need 100 pilots, like Johnny Allison." Born in rural Florida, November 21, 1912, John Allison probably had the longest route to World War II as any GI. John was sitting in a high school study hall in Gainesville, Florida, when he heard a Curtiss P-1 fighter go into a dive. He said the prop revved up, the exhaust made a beautiful sound, the study windows rattled, and he decided that he wanted to be an Army pilot. He graduated from the University of Florida in 1936 with a commission in the field artillery, but applied and entered the Army Air Corps Flying School in San Antonio. His class was the first to train on monoplanes. He conquered each plane's characteristics easily and earned his wings in 1937. Shortly after his awe-inspiring display of the P-40 capabilities to the Chinese delegation, John was assigned as a military attaché. In the spring of 1941, he left the States for London with friend Hub Zemke to train British pilots to fly and maintain the American P-40. Only months later, John was summoned to the London embassy for a secret mission to Russia. He left in the middle of the night with Harry Hopkins, President Roosevelt's most trusted advisor. John spent much of his free time in Russia on the roof of the U.S. ambassador's residence, watching the Germans advance to Moscow until artillery shrapnel fell too close for comfort. It was here that John and Hub heard of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor and America's declaration of war. He would finally get the opportunity to serve his country by defending the Burma Road in China with the 23rd Fighter Group, the newly evolved American volunteer group, the Flying Tigers. When John arrived in China in June 1942, Japanese bombers were mercilessly attacking Chinese airfields and cities, mostly at night. He asked Tex Hill if the AVG had any success defending at night. Tex replied, "No," and John vowed that he would be in the air the next time. With John positioned at 12,000 feet, a radio call advised that 3 bombers were making their way to the base. John cut them off when they made their turn for the bombing run. But he misjudged the distance in the black of night, and when he dove to attack, bullets riddled his plane, hitting his radio and grazing his arm. One bullet went through his parachute, and one went through his engine. Undeterred, Allison chose the bomber to his left, then on the right, and then the leader. In all, Allison shot down 3 bombers that night, an amazing feat in his first combat experience. In June 1943, John and Philip Cochrane were selected by General Arnold to lead the newly formed 1st Air Commando Force to support the renowned British guerrilla fighter, General Wingate. March 5, 1944 was a long night. C-47 transports were loaded with the British assault force, equipment and mules, each towing 2 Waco C-4A gliders. John had never flown a glider, but he was with his troops, piloting in the first wave. Operation Thursday was the first nighttime behind enemy lines airfield seizure. They carried out the wounded, harassed the enemy, provided air cover, and supplied the forces. Shortly after General John Allison retired from active duty in 1947, he became an executive with Northrop Corporation until his retirement in 1979. For service to his country as a top gun and as a courageous and innovative military strategist, John Allison has earned his place in the National Aviation Hall of Fame.